And good morning. We're on Viewpoint 96.3 each Wednesday. This is Busby and the old geezer come together. We have interesting guests from all over heck and back. Always from Golden, well, not always from Golden County. Once in a while we go outside the borders of the state to get them. Mrs. Busby, were you going to read all morning, or did you want to enter into the conversation this morning?
Well, I thought maybe you could just go ahead without me because I've got so many interesting things here.
Well, that's
to read.
Right.
You know, our guest has brought us a calendar that they have distributed in Mount Pulaski, and he's brought us a book. You know, one thing, Phil Bertoni, that always amazes me is how they get volunteers to do so very, very much. I think it's amazing, and bless your heart for it.
Yeah, it's amazing to us, too, because we were worried about the youth, the young volunteers, and they've come through for us. And it's almost a tearjerker to talk about it because we didn't expect such a wonderful support from the young people of Mount Pulaski.
Yeah, before we get into that, we're glad to have Phil Bertoni. We want to tell why Phil is here in just a minute. Phil has really jumped into the fray of things over there in Vinegar Hill, Mount Pulaski, as a very interested former citizen, come back and really is one of those folks who push a lot of things to get done. A typical community spirit like Judy and I talk about. But before we get into the meat of the program, I'd like to, we always try to have a kudo, Phil, and Monday I played in a golf fundraiser for first Bob Grau Toys for Tots tournament. Not as well attended as it was. It was just a first effort.
Well, if I'd known about it, I'd been there.
Yeah, right. It went well, and they made a little money, and the sole purpose of the money is to go for the Toys for Tots.
Wonderful.
And Bob Grau heard about that just shortly before he left us, and was very enthusiastic about it. He didn't know anything about this tournament they were going to have to his honor. That came along later. But it was a nicely done thing, well organized, and I just have to offer a kudo to the folks who got behind that and organized it. And we had a lot of fun. I played with his honor the mayor, and the chief of police, and Ron Fox, and we just had a great time.
And there were some Mount Pulaski golfers over
there,
too.
we had the Romer family over there and others. It was nicely done, and just have to take our hat off to the folks who organized it and planned it. And next year is going to be a little better, and it'll grow exponentially. I decided that I can quit playing in some of the political outings and keep the money here for the causes at home. So it was a good thing, and I really enjoyed it. So, well, now 175th anniversary. You folks have been working on this for over a year.
Over a year,
as you plan it. Tell me about how the inception of the idea and how it grew. But it certainly was like an acorn that's growing into a big oak now.
Well, we've always had big anniversaries on our 25th anniversary, and it turns out the grandfather of Tom Martin was instrumental in the 1936, the 1961, and the 1986. Well, I guess he'd passed away by 86. But Harry Weibel was a publisher and owner of Mount Pulaski Times newspaper.
And a wonderful man.
And he used to spearhead all these fall festivals every year. But then the 21st anniversary, he really pushed. Well, he's no longer here, but his grandson is. So his grandson, Tom Martin, stepped up, assumed the role, self-appointed himself, basically, after we all agreed that, you should do it. And that's how it started. I mean, it was over a year ago that no one, he just called a meeting and he says, we need to do something, and we all nodded and said, well, you should be our leader. And of course, he was willing to do it, but he needed support.
Well, you have no small plans.
No.
I mean, you folks have really, and you've gone to no little expense in getting this organized.
Well, yeah, he said we'll probably need a budget of $100,000, and we all laughed. Well, we've raised $80,000, and it's still coming in, and we've got over 25 bands coming in. Half of them are bluegrass, but the other ones like St. Louis Riverman, 176 Keys Dueling Pianos, Groove Daddies, Kevin Turner Band, Highway J, Horn Dogs, Sojourn. These Horn Dogs are a bunch of Quincy music teachers coming to play, and I've only named half of them, but you go on the website and all these bands have web pages and Facebook stuff, and some of them are nationally known.
Yes, I speak from personal experience. The folks who are going to enjoy the St. Louis Rivermen are in for a real treat. Those folks are great musicians and entertainers.
I understand they are.
That's going to be, and that's a freebie.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about this.
Well, we were going to charge, and we decided, our money at that point, we were still in the black, and we decided to not charge. We hope we didn't make a mistake on that, but actually, the people of Mount Pulaski have always had a tremendous music foundation because the European immigrants, mostly German, settled in Mount Pulaski area and in Mount Pulaski, and we had brass bands back in 1856 playing for Abraham Lincoln's speech to support Colonel John C. Fremont, and it was at Atlanta, Illinois. And there was a Mount Pulaski band there, and the Bloomington Pantograph reported it, so that's why I know. And then William Judge Stringer, who wrote the history of Logan County, 1911 book, he's got the Mount Pulaski band in there playing for the Lincoln dedication of the Civil War Monument.
That's amazing.
And that was 1869. So we've had bands, and these are basically adult bands. They're not necessarily high school kids.
No.
They started a little bit later on because we didn't even have a high school in 18... Well, we had a school system, I guess, late 1840s, but a lot of these bands were adult bands because they played music over in Europe, and they play music here, too.
Well, typically, over there at Vinegar Hill, let's go to Vinegar Hill just a minute, then I'll finish my statement. We talked about that. Where did that name come from? And I think I guessed right. Would you just kind of elucidate on that just a minute?
Well, in the Prohibition time, we were one of the last towns to go dry. We had more bootleggers than, well, of course, I guess Lincoln had a few too, but we were at a juncture of railroads going from Peoria, Pekin, Lincoln, Pulaski, Decatur, and from Chicago, Champaign, Clinton, Pulaski, Lincoln, Springfield, St. Louis, Illinois Central. So, and of course we're more remote than Lincoln. We have very few police over there at that time, and the police that we did have enjoyed their booze, so they looked the other way. So we had lots of bootleggers. So then to hide the beer and the whiskey, they used vinegar barrels to ship it. And of course they were marked vinegar and pickle barrels, but in them was, of course, booze and beer. And the high school kids were on the payroll because they were the ones that loaded them and unloaded them from the trains.
Well, they must have been big strapping boys because those were heavy barrels.
They were, and so then the conductor, on his arrival to Pulaski, the code name was not, here's Mount Pulaski where you can get your drinks, your booze. He would say, all out for Vinegar Hill. And so then the people with their flasks knew what that meant. So they got off the train at that point.
Yeah, Jim Ash was running around over there. Well, that embellished what I thought essentially was right, but there's more to it than the story, and I'm glad to get the fullness of the story because I knew it had to do with bootlegging and vinegar. I thought bottles, but it was barrels. So that's great. Now, I started to ask you a question about, or make a comment about how things could come together in the community of Vinegar Hill, Mount Pulaski. It doesn't take but one or two people to start saying something like this 175th committee grew, and the first thing you know, even if it's church supper, you get 2 or 3, and the first thing you know, things happen over there.
Yeah, we started out with 10 or 15. And we've lost some along the way because of personalities and the work involved. But actually, we meet twice a month at the VFW Hall on the square of Mount Pulaski. Twice a month. Saturdays, at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's usually a 2-hour meeting. Last Saturday it was 4 hours because we had all the committees, the chairpersons of all the committees for the festival come in, and we all interviewed them and talked to them and see how things were going. I'm on the executive committee, so I had to sit there for 4 hours. But it was, and so then twice a month, 20 to 25, sometimes 30 people are there.
That's amazing. I go back to my original statement about getting volunteers to do such extensive labor.
And some people can't make it because they're working, like our hardware store guy, Doug Johnson, and our farmer, Mike Richner, and Tricia Aylesworth. She works at the bank. They can't always come over there, but they're heavily involved.
Yeah.
And there's others too that that are involved, but they don't come to all the meetings.
I'd like to go to this reception down at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library. Are there tickets still available for that?
I think there are. As a matter of fact, I have a couple I could sell you, but it's so I would say yes, but they tried to close it off because they had to. The hors d'oeuvre people, the caterers, had to get a number, but I still think you can get maybe a cut ticket.
Well,
here
let's talk about that. Tell us what that is over there.
Well,
this is a big banquet down there.
Yeah, Tom's wife Cheryl works for a big accounting firm in Springfield.
She's a CPA.
She's a CPA, so she's used to these big galas that they have once in a while, and they like to go to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum. And they rent it out, the CPA firm does. So she thought, well, maybe we could do the same thing. Well, it costs almost $6,000 just to rent the place. And then the caterers, $1,500, $2,000.
Yeah.
And then if you want to have the gift shop open, you have to pay for that. So somebody stepped forward to give money for the gift shop, and then so we've raised money, and we've come up with about $9,000 or $10,000. But if you multiply 300 tickets times $35, that almost covers it,
well,
so that's what we've done. We've sold over 300 tickets.
That's remarkable, but...
And so what we're going to do, the main idea is to kick it off, and we're going to present. I should have brought one with me today. We've got these bronze busts of General Casimir Pulaski, the namesake of our founder of our town. You've got Abraham Lincoln and Lincoln, so we've got Pulaski. And Pulaski was a Revolutionary War hero from Poland that volunteered his services to George Washington and the Continental Army. And he couldn't speak English in the beginning, but he came over with Benjamin Franklin's blessing. He met him in France. He got kicked out of Poland. He was from a rich family. The Russians and the Germans and whatever invaded Poland. He had to leave. He learned how to ride a horse and use his sword before you and I learned to walk. That's how they did in those days. So he was only like 20 years old, 25, and he comes to America. Well, by that time he was about 30 years old. And he went to the Continental Congress and asked him to help him get a regiment of cavalry together, and they laughed at him. And they thought he wanted to have his own personal army. And no, he says he wanted to help out George Washington. But they were a land army. They weren't like the Europeans with their crusades and the horses. And I guess over here there were too many trees to bump into. I don't know. But so General Pulaski became the father of the American cavalry because he scrounged together a bunch of militiamen, farmers, and the Husseins, the German warriors. He saved George Washington's army at the Battle of Brandywine Creek from getting decimated because they lost the battle, but in retreat the British were chasing them like dogs. And he took his horsemen, he ran into the attacking British and split their force. He saved George Washington's army. Well, guess what? One of the guys in George Washington's army was named James Turley. James Turley got a land grant for land in Kentucky. He named his first son George Washington Turley after his friend George Washington. because George Washington became his friend as well and visited the Turleys in Kentucky years later, I just found out. Well, then they moved to Lake Fork area and the Mount Pulaski area, and they owned all that land. And they befriended the Indians. They became Indian friends. They came in the way of skirmishes and the settler problems. They were able to iron things out. And so when George Washington Turley, along with Javis Capps and Dr. Barton Robinson, they founded Mount Pulaski, and Turley spoke up and said, well, since you're using my land, of course, he put the land into a land development company, and then people bought land, and he got paid back. But
he did.
But anyway, he took a chance, and so then they agreed to use his idea of Pulaski for the name of our town.
And that's how that happened.
And that's how that happened.
Well, it's not.
Is that covered as well in your calendar here that has all kinds of stories?
Yeah, some of it is, but a lot of
stories.
it's on the website at www.mountpulaskil.com.
Oh, good. Everybody should look
Because
at
you know there's a nuclear submarine, the SSBN 663, that was commissioned in 1964. A U.S. nuclear submarine called Casimir Pulaski. That's how revered he is. And of course, there's other submarines named George Washington. All the nuclear submarines are named after American patriots. You got the George Washington, and you got Paul Revere, and you got Casimir Pulaski. There are like 40 of them. And it served our country from 64 to 94, 30 years. And then, of course, in the meantime, Illinois celebrates Casimir Pulaski Day on March 5th. The schools used to get out. Not all of them do anymore. But and then 2 years ago, President Obama passed a joint resolution, which was offered in Congress, to name General Pulaski an honorary citizen of the United States. Well, guess how many have been honorary citizens of the United States?
How many?
7.
Oh.
Fact, really, never knew.
Casimir Pulaski's number 7. Churchill. Winston Churchill is one. Mother Teresa. General Lafayette.
I'll be darned.
Well, he's in good company, isn't
sure
he?
is.
Well,
Yes.
if we don't take just a minute for a commercial break, we won't be in good company. So we'll defer to Mr. Ash and the commercial break right now.
Okay.